Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Multimusic Technology. Today we're having a look at the Donner Essential L1. Something like that. The glorious thing about it is it is what it is. So whatever it is that you seem to have done to it, all you can do is undo it. You can't like initialize a patch or load a different preset because it is what it is. Like at the moment, I've got no waveforms and yet it's singing. It's singing. It's a terrifically fun synthesizer. I absolutely adore it. I mean, I adore the form factor and I adore the sound engine. Essentially, the analog circuitry built into this is modelled entirely on the Roland SH-101. My favourite synthesizer probably of all time. Probably. I got to borrow one when I was a kid and absolutely loved it. And of course I have a Behringer MS-101, one of the, from the first batch that came off. And we'll do a tiny bit of comparison with this, perhaps, later on. But there's a lot of that around at the moment. I think smarter people than me will be able to do videos on how it compares to the original SH-101. But the question I suppose that raises in me is that the point? Is it the point to sit this next to an SH-101 and see if it's the same? Is that what we're after? Maybe. Or is it perhaps more interesting just to look at it as a synthesizer by itself? What can it do? What can it offer? And what it is that really stirred me about the SH-101, I think, is its simplicity. I mean, the synthesizer I had before the SH-101 was the DX100, which was FM. Completely different kettle of fish, and that's what I cut my synthesizer teeth on. So coming to something which is analog and hardware, it was a very enlightening and opening experience. Life-changing, perhaps you could say, because you had everything laid out in front of you. All of the sliders meant what they said, which was brilliant. DX100, you've just got buttons and a data entry thing. Nothing was ever what it was supposed to be or whatever it said that it was. Nothing made any sense. It was all purely experimental guesswork. Whereas here, I know what's going on just by glancing at it. And that, in essence, is why the SH-101 works so well. I mean, there are plenty of other synthesizers that also do that, that have carried that through. But there was just something in the 101 that somehow nailed it particularly well. I mean, I guess a lot of that is down to also the sound. And the analog sound within this fully analog synthesizer is designed around the same circuits that Roland used. So the sound is going to be pretty much there. And the sound was different. It wasn't the squelch of the 303. It wasn't the softness of the Moog. It had its own character. It had this lightness, this bounce, this resistance somehow, that when you could play with that filter, although it could go certainly off the rails and you could push it in that direction, it would behave. It would do exactly what you asked it to do, and it'd be pulling that down, using that envelope to route itself through that low pass filter. Just brilliantly. It gave it this life and this lightness of touch where, although, again, you could play bass lines on it, you didn't have to. You could sail about the top in leads, or you could thin it out so it could be this perfectly arpeggiated or sequenced line running through your stuff. It fitted in so well in a mix because it wasn't overpowering. It wasn't all things to all people being the biggest, fattest sound you could possibly imagine. No, it had a lightness to it. And that, I think, is important. I think that's nice. It has this bounce, this lift, this feel, this smile that then gets pulled across your face as you're playing with this little thing. That to me is the legacy of the SH-101, really, and you can find that in the Behringer version, and you can find it in the Roland virtual analog remakes in the S1 and the SH-01A, is it? Oh, I don't know. And similarly, Donner have come along, taken those same ideas and put it into a more of a modern makeup without losing anything, which is key, I think. So easy to lose everything behind a menu system, or to reduce the number of knobs and sliders in order to somehow make it a different experience. But no, we still have everything laid out. And Donner have done a couple of little tweaks to the sequencer, to the arpeggiator. They've added a whole other envelope, which is more important than you'd think, perhaps. And they've also revealed the triangle waveform like Behringer did, and they've thrown in some FM possibilities too, similarly to what Behringer did. So I don't know that there's any massive innovation here exactly, but it's giving us what we want, making it easy, enhancing a little bit, and giving us another option of getting into that kind of sound. Oh, well, maybe there was one thing, and that's this. The keyboard comes off. Remarkable. Yeah. Is that an innovation? Possibly. I mean, if you're looking at the Roland boutiques, they also had a keyboard that came off these little units, and it's a similar idea. Now, I have to say, people do argue with me on this a little bit, but I had one of the earlier boutiques, and I got the KM25 keyboard, I think it was called, K25M keyboard, and it was the worst keyboard I've ever played. Ever. It was just awful. It was like a piece of plastic on a spring, and that was it. It just felt terrible. And considering you were paying quite a few £100 for one of the boutique things, one of the Roland boutique units, the keyboard just seemed like ridiculous. I just hated it. Got rid of it almost immediately. Now this is a similar idea, but the action on this is all right. It's okay. I mean, you can buy this separately for about 100 quid. And as a MIDI controller, you've got USB and MIDI out on the back. Also, is that sustain? Yeah, a sustain pedal thing. For 100 quid MIDI controller, yeah, I mean, it's similar to one of the micro Arturia thingy-bobbies. It's okay. It's okay. It's got a couple of nice bits here and some changes that you can make to the velocity curve and other bits and pieces. But I'm not going to be dwelling on this. I'm just going to be using it to play the L1. Now, this size is really quite lovely. I can imagine it sitting underneath my computer monitor between my QWERTY keyboard and that. Have it plugged in via USB, and then I've just got to play with the sounds right in front of me. So the form factor here, again similar to the boutique, is really good, really interesting, really different, because the Behringer, which I've got here, is such a tank. I mean, that's a positive. You know, that's a pro for the Behringer one, is that it is made of bricks. Made of bricks and concrete. It's extraordinary. Extraordinary. And you know, that's good. That's a good thing for what that's for. But you're never going to put this in your backpack and take it anywhere. You know, you're never going to carry it under your arm. I mean, you're supposed to be able to put a mod grip on this and a guitar strap, and you can, but it will wear you out. Whereas the Donner is terribly, terribly lightweight. Terribly lightweight. And will easily go in your backpack. So, interesting. Yes, an interesting idea. I don't dislike it. It's kind of cool. I also get the impression that there's going to be more of these coming along. So perhaps, I mean, you know, I would put my money on something like a Juno coming along, because Donna seemed to be fishing around in the Roland synth space with the B1, the L1 and the D1. I don't know. They did a 303, which was pretty good. And they've done this, which is the SH-101. So perhaps a little polysynth down the line would be great. And then you'd already have your keyboard to attach to it. And you could end up with like a rack of these little things. Very interesting. So, you know, a little bit of innovation. We like that. While authenticity and accurate recreations of things is one thing, there's also a lot to be said for taking an idea and running with it, doing your own spin on it, making your own character out of it. Become something different to give people an option and a reason to look at yours rather than somebody else's. And that is, I think, what Donner are doing really, really quite well. So the question is then, does it sound like the SH-101? Yes, of course it does. Of course it does. What are you thinking? If you're the sort of person who needs to look at them side by side and analyse waveforms and stuff like that, well, then it's never going to be the same, is it? Because you can't find two SH-101s that sound exactly the same. But for most of us who enjoy the sound of that Roland synthesizer, or have had one or have the Behringer, this sounds exactly the same. There's nothing more to say on that, really. There's plenty of demonstrations, I think, out on the YouTubes, which will show you exactly how well it compares. From my point of view, it just sounds like an SH-101. That's great. I'm not going to worry about that anymore. What I'm going to worry about is playing it as a synthesizer. Awesome. It just has that sound, man, you know. That bounce. It's just fantastic. Let me stick it onto an arp again. On hold. There it is. It's all completely there. Fabulous. Right, so how am I going to review this to you then? I mean, you've already got the sense, I think, perhaps, that the sound is great. But how usable is it? How well do things work? And perhaps you don't know anything about an SH-101 and would like to know what this is about. So let's do a bit of that. So what we're going to do, I'll bring you in a bit closer. We'll have a look at the waveforms. We'll look at them. We'll listen to them. We'll listen to the filter. We'll play around with the self-oscillation. We'll then look at the envelopes and how that shapes the sound. The fact that there is a really interesting changes and modes that you can use in the envelopes, which does different things. I'll then have a quick look at the sequencer, because that's not particularly interesting. However, the arpeggiator is. So we'll spend a little bit more time on that, I think. We're then going to run some things with it, run some things through it, stuff it up itself and see what makes it squeal. That, I think, that'll probably do it, I think. So come in, come, don't be shy, don't be shy. So the layout of the L1 follows very much the standard, the tradition of the SH-101, where you've got your LFO over here, a little bit of glide as well, which is probably the thing I don't ever use, but hey, we have it. We have what they call a modulator, which you've got an LFO in here. You've also got some audio rate options in there, which gives it this FM flavour if you want to play with it. You then got your oscillator, single oscillator with a range knob to send it up and down about the place. And you've got pulse width modulation in here as well as pitch modulation, either by envelope or via LFO. Then you have your source mixer, and this is one of the most important things about the SH-101, is that you can choose what waveforms to listen to. You've got a square wave, you've got a sawtooth, you've got your triangle, which the original didn't have, you've got noise, and you've also got external input, which we will endeavour to look at, because that's pretty interesting. We've also got a sub here as well, where you can set it to 1 octave, 2 octaves, or a 2 octave pulse wave, as opposed to a square wave. And then over here, your filter, frequency, resonance, and then how that's being modulated. So envelope, LFO, or keyboard. You can have all three going all at once. You've then got your two envelopes. One envelope for the filter, one envelope for the VCA. That is not something that any other SH-101 clone has. So that's perhaps a bit of an individuality there. And then you've got a VCA which has a couple of different modes. You can either have it gated, enveloped, cycling in some way, or droning, which we will use for our looking at the waveforms. So I've got my scope here, so we can just do that first. So let's open up the frequency on the filter. Let's forget about the envelopes because we're going to be using it in drone mode. And just to reiterate that the synthesizer is what you see. It is absolutely what you see. So that means that it's always changing. You're always moving it to what you want it to be. There's no recall or moving or leaping to anything. It just is what it is. And that makes it, for me, really, really nice. So filter all the way up. This is the most common reason why you don't get sound out, that when you get it out of its box the first time you play it, if that's down, you'll not get anything at all. So you need the filter to be up. You need these to be up as well. Alright, so let's have a look at our waveforms. So the triangle first. A beautiful triangle. There's no actual tuning on the oscillator, no tuning knob or anything like that, but you can LFO it up and down like I'm doing right now, if you so wish. So that's your triangle, sawtooth. Square. Pulse width. Now there's only the one LFO, so if you're modulating more than one thing, all those things are going to follow the same undulation. So you don't have pulse width modulation, for instance, individually that you can change manually. You purely have on how much of the LFO is going to the pulse width modulation. You've got noise. I've heard people don't like the noise. I I really don't feel anything about it at all. Yeah, it sounds a lot like noise to me. And then we've got our sub, which is a nice fat square wave, which can also be an octave down or a pulse. So there's your square, there's your pulse, there's your octave up. So if you've got something going, I'm going to use the arpeggiator most of the time, I should imagine. If I bring in something playing, then start to introduce the sub. It's really nice. It just adds this beefiness. It really fills out that bottom end. It gives it a whole different tonal character. So if you're playing something, a sequence is going, and you've got something nice happening, you can just start to bring that in, and it gives it a whole other dimension. Just brilliantly. Love that. Have always loved that. It's one of the best things ever. And of course you can just use it by itself if you just want something a bit meaty down the bottom end. But then it's no different to this, necessarily. Okay, so those are your sources. You can also mix in an external input, as I say, which we'll do a little bit later on, because I had a go at that, and that was quite fun. So next then, you need the filter. The filter is what's important at this point. So if I put that square wave up again, and then just start to bring the filter in. It's just really nice. Hey, you can stick it through the LFO. Hey, but let's do this differently. Let's just do a good old-fashioned filter sweep. I'm going to use a sawtooth for this, so it's not in any other way modulated. So this is fully open to fully closed. Nothing could be more exciting than that. Let's put the resonance up a little bit. You can see it pulling apart at those edges into a nice little roll, where you have the edginess of the sawtooth just sort of devolves into a sine wave. It's so nice. Stick that up a bit more. As it forms itself into a sawtooth. That's only halfway up. Push it another quarter, and you can see that ringing, and hear the ringing coming off that filter. It has a life of its own. Then if you stick it to the top, then pull out any of the other waveforms. I've got nothing else running, and this is purely the filter by itself. I can play it. I can LFO it. Which is beautifully classic special effects time. Introduce a bit of noise. Just lovely, just lovely. So there's your filter. Your filter can be affected by the envelope, by an LFO, or by keyboard tracking here. So you have all sorts of things, and you can get a balance between those things going on all at the same time. If we turn ourselves back into a bit more of an envelope mode and start getting something going on, we're going to need some form of source. Turn off the arpeggiator. So what I've got is the envelope is running into the pitch modulator and changing the pitch. Let's take that out of the equation for the moment. So I've got a collection of modulators now going on into the sawtooth. I've got the envelope, just very simply here, just with a bit of decay, attacking that down. But I've also got a little bit of LFO in there, giving it the wobble towards the end. And then with keyboard tracking, it gets brighter as you go up and down, rather than it getting darker as you go up. So these envelopes then, let's have a look at how they work. I think I'm going to lose the scope for now because it can be a bit distracting. We understand and we saw the waveforms, yeah, that's really cool. So let's just focus in a little bit more on the keyboard itself and keep our wits about us. So envelopes, two envelopes here, envelope 1, envelope 2. Envelope 1 is a filter. So if I take out envelope 2, we're not going to hear anything other than a slight slap, because that's controlling the amplifier. So we're going to need something in there. Now traditionally on SH-101 there's one envelope which runs the lot, whereas here I've got that decay on the filter happening completely separately to the actual underlying tone through the VCA. So the VCA carries on even though the filter has finished its envelope, and that's something that you wouldn't actually hear on the original. Similarly, I could have the VCA come in very slowly and the filter's already done its thing. Or alternatively the other way around, have the filter come in by itself while actually the VCA is already there. It's just all its availability is just top notch. I love that element. And I've just brought in the other waveform and it's thickened things up. There's a little bit of pulse width modulation going on. And that's just lovely. Alright, just to go through the envelopes because they have stuff, right? You've got a gate mode, which means I can't really remember, but it just holds on while you're holding it. So let's put the text down. It's instant off regardless of what the release is saying, yeah? This gate mode. Cycle mode. Alright. So the envelope is re-triggering. It's going at the LFO rate, yeah. So there's some sort of weird combination going on, some kind of connection between that envelope and the LFO. Strange. I'm not going to look into that any deeper at the moment. And then you've got drone mode where it's always on and the envelope is ignored. Or at least envelope 2 is ignored. Envelope 1 is still doing its business. Let's put it back to VCA 2. Now within our little menu over here we have a couple of envelope options. Hit the menu button, envelopes. You have this ability to merge envelopes, which is this really, I mean, I think it's a little bit of genius. Someone in there thought that, well, with these two envelopes, you can't actually recreate authentically the proper SH-101 sound because you've got these two things going on that it never had. So you have this envelope merge option, which you can set to on, and that essentially removes one of the envelopes. So you've now got your authentic SH-101 envelope situation. So this one, envelope 1, is now no longer doing anything. Get that out of the way. It's all run on this one envelope. So VCA and VCF being affected by the same envelope in the same way. Like so. So the best of every worlds, all the bests. You can also change the retriggering of the envelopes. So, because at the moment it's retriggering all the time. Let's get something sensible going on. So as you can see, it's re-triggering on every note, even though I'm still holding another note. It's re-triggering the whole note. So this is essentially being ignored as I go to the next one. And then it's coming back on again. You can change that behaviour to make it not do it. So it's now not re-triggering the filter envelope until I do a whole other note. Do you see? So if you hold a note, you kind of get this legato mode. But you can also do it onto the VCA envelope as well. So you have that whichever way you choose. I like it to re-trigger mostly, although sometimes I don't. Sometimes I quite like it legato. Some ways I wish that was slightly easier to access, like there was just a legato button which allowed you to get to that just without having to menu it a little bit. Just a little bit, that would be nice. But never mind. So from here we should probably look at the other modulators. So we've got a modulator here, which is a single LFO that I've spoken about, but you do have different waveforms: square wave, triangle wave, random, and noise, and then audio rate as well. Let's see whether we can make that sound interesting. Is that likely? Don't know, difficult to say, isn't it? So if we put it, just using it as it is, I can do some pitch modulation. That's nice and simple. Or LFO, or filter modulation. Or pulse width modulation if I had the square one up. But if I go into audio rate, the LFO is then boosted to a higher set of frequencies, and I can do essentially the same thing. I'm just potentially pushing it further and deeper into the territories of FM. Let's put it up nice and high, go into the pitch. Certainly get some more interesting sounds in all of that. Or we can stick it into the filter. That'll do on that, I think. Right, into the sequencer section, which is a pretty straightforward thing. It's the kind of thing that makes me think that there could be a better sequencer somewhere down the line, because at the moment it's pretty basic. You have 4 slots for 4 patterns. Now you can store up to 128 patterns, but you can only run 4 at any one time. You can swap between them, just sort of on the fly like, which is really quite nice. But 4 feels really restrictive, but hey, is what we've got. Now to do a thing, you select a slot, you have to shift and slot. So I'm in slot A, I've got an empty pattern, which probably isn't empty because I've probably done it before. So if I just clear that. Okay, then I've got nothing going on. You can record up to 64 steps. It's in step mode, so you just press record and then you put in what you want. Like so, and it's there. Oh, I'm currently on external clock. Hang on a sec. Now what you would really like at this point would be able to transpose that, but sadly there is no transposition. So what I would have to do is create another pattern. So if I go to slot B, pattern number 2, then we just make sure that that's also clear. Yeah. Okay. So I could record something else into empty pattern number 2, into slot 2, so change key, I suppose. Something like that. Then I can swap back to the other one. Oh, I missed it. Nice and simple. If I have a pattern that has something in it and I press record again, it will show you the steps along here, the first 16, and then you can move on to other ones. You can then select the step, I think. Yeah, there we go. You can select the step. Like so. And then you can change the pitch of that if you so wish. How do I get... Oh, I press back. I press back, that's how you do it. So I changed the note. Gosh, that's terrible. Let's get rid of that. You also have ties and rests, so you can put that in. So I can go rest, rest, tie. Let's see how that looks. I mentioned earlier how I thought the arpeggiator was excellent, and it is, and let me show you why. So you can swap between them here, arpeggiator. Now you've got a couple of modes, up, down, backwards, random, that kind of thing. All the usual things you'd expect. So let's put hold on. Something nice and simple. So I forget sometimes that velocity is involved, so I didn't hit them very hard, that's why you can't hear it very well. Let me try that again. Alright, we'll go for that. So your different modes, up and down, up, random. But what's nice is that these 16 steps here represent the pattern of the arpeggiator. So you can take a couple out, and suddenly it trips into finding itself in a completely different space. That's really interesting. Interesting enough to put some effects on, I think. Drums. It's not arpeggiated, so you can't transpose that either, but you could obviously put in new notes. See, that did not go well. I kind of feel there should be some kind of re-triggering going on. Alright, that found it. Thank you, Mr. Cockrell. Now there's another feature that I'd like to show, which I find particularly fascinating, and that's the external input. We often talk about it in synthesizers. Oh yeah, it's got an external input to the filter. But do we ever actually see that happen? No, I can't remember the last time I saw someone actually do something with it. So I thought that I would, because it's an aspect of this which gives it yet another level of fun and stuff to do. And also it reminds me that the original SH-101 had this trick where you'd plug it into the 808 and use a track on the 808 to trigger the sequencer, which you can also do here. In fact, this whole thing is synced up to Pamela's Pro Workout over here, and is using external sync to drive it so that other things are in time. And absolutely, I can send it a pattern of clock signals, and that will take the sequencer off into a certain sort of weird shape. But I'm not going to dwell on that for the moment. I'm going to run in some external stuff. So the drums, for instance, I've got running into channel 2 on my mixer here. If I take that, so I'm going to plug this in the back. That seems to be the better input for modular stuff, I am finding. Now the trick with the external input is that it's just a source. Then it goes through the filter and the VCA. So what that does is means that you can't actually hear it until you press a note, because you're using that external input as the sound source of what happens when you press and open a gate. Now you can drone, and that's probably your way in, I should think. So you have to push up the external input. There's my little drum pattern, which is fine. So in drone mode, that's fine. I can use a filter on it. get out of drone mode, I then have to run a sequence in order to play it. And if I'm using this arpeggiator pattern, I can create a pattern on here which is essentially going to rework the drums, I think. Let's see whether that works. Oh, hold. Let's put hold on. Kinda. But it may all be to do with the quantization between what I've played and what's happening. Alright, let's give it a little bit more release. Let's see if I can get this to sound interesting. So you can hear that the drums are only coming through on the notes that are active. Are you with me? I thought that was interesting anyway. I'm going to take a different sound source just to show that differently. If I take an output from the synthesizer I was using, the Monumatic, put that in the back, see how that feels about things. Oh yeah, that's better. So in drone mode, this is what you can hear coming through. If I turn it back to the envelope, that's now going to gate its way through it, which is quite nice. Then I can introduce the melody back in. Coming out of the Monumatic over here. So there you are, the essential L1. I think you get the idea. I think you do. In my fuddling and fiddling about, I need to mention the hardware because that is really the lowest thing about this thing. The sound is brilliant. The interaction is brilliant. Little things, the envelope, the arpeggiator sequencer, bits and pieces, order rate modulation, all of those design ideas are implemented well, work well, feel fantastic, sounds absolutely awesome. So from that side of things, it's brilliant. The more troubling area is just the quality of the hardware. These slider things, they don't feel the same all the way up and all the way down. You know, there's resistance and then there's no resistance. They're a bit wobbly. I've got a stuck button that's stuck in that I have to keep prising loose with a there we go thing there, so it comes out again. I can't get a reliable input through my external input because there's something wrong there. My USB port sort of was all bent out of shape. So there are hardware issues, but at this price point, it's not that you should expect things to be broken. I don't think things are necessarily broken. It's just that there is a plastic element to this which perhaps is not going to survive the rigors of live performance quite as much as something like the tank that is the MS-1 from Behringer. And so that is just another thing to factor in. But having it sat here and playing with it, I mean, these buttons are great. They work really well. The knobs are fine. Everything about it is fine. None of it is fantastic. It's only really the sound and the joy of playing the synthesizer that's in the element of fantastical. The hardware interface and the keyboard, they're good, they are fine. Does that describe it well enough? I hope so, because I don't want to take anything away from this being a fabulous little synthesizer just because I've got the odd hardware niggle. Those are the sort of things I'm sure Donna would sort out if I had the time and the inclination and I'd bought this myself. In terms of firmware, I had a few initial problems updating the firmware. Hopefully they've got those sorts of things sorted out now. I really like the envelopes and the way that you can change those to be more authentic. You can merge them together. I think that's pretty brilliant, and the different ways you can use retriggering and such like. Just wish that was a little bit more out on the table. The keyboard here is alright, it feels fine. It's got pitch bend and a modulation wheel which doesn't actually do anything at the moment. Does it? No, but there's probably a way you can sort that out. The manual is not in a great state at the moment. It's one, I mean, in some ways it follows the true Roland way of doing things, which is to give you just a bloody great big sheet of paper, which doesn't really tell you anything other than what each thing does, just not how you would use it. So it has that sort of vibe going on with it. So there's probably information in there on how you map the mod wheel to do something, but I don't know what that is currently. But overall, my impression of it is that it's a fun little synthesizer. I've thoroughly enjoyed playing with it for these last couple of days. I had it on the desk, playing with it seriously. That sound is great. I mean, you add some effects to it as well, and it really, really soars. That's just lovely. There's no getting away from the fact that that's a fantastic little sound. And that arpeggiator with its little pattern thing actually brings it even more acid than it had in the first place. And the velocity at play that I keep forgetting about. I'm pressing things and going, oh, well, why isn't it sounding very loud? And I forget I just need to hit it harder. You could turn the velocity off. But how lovely is that? How simple and lovely and fantastic. If I could bring my pads back in. And maybe even the drums. So what do you think? Is that any good? I thoroughly enjoy the whole SH-101 space. Anything that pretends or points itself towards that idea of the simplicity of a perfectly laid out, great sounding, filter laden synthesizer is an absolute winner for me. This sounds fantastic. I'm loving the arpeggiator. All of it really works together really, really well. The innovation of the split keyboard thing is pretty cool. There's no getting away from it. Being able to have this as a separate little module, it's nice. All of it's nice. Hardware could be better. There's a few bits and pieces on that. They're a little bit kind of on the less than fabulous side, but otherwise I think Donna have done a really good job. I hope that was helpful. And if this sort of thing is, then subscribe, or join us over on Patreon. It would be really appreciated. In the meantime, go make some tunes.